Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call the March 17th Yuba City Council meeting to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Mayor Dukes?
Here.
Vice Mayor Buckland?
Here.
Councilmember Cleveland?
Here.
Councilmember Didball? Here. Councilmember Gill?
Here. All right, we'll start the meeting with the invocation by Councilmember Buckland, and if Councilmember Gill could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance following that.
If you'll bow your heads with me as I pray. Almighty Father, first let me say thank you on behalf of those gathered here tonight. We're truly blessed with your presence. We ask for your guidance and clear vision so the efforts of staff and council and our citizens will be a benefit to those that live and work in this community. It is in your most blessed name that I pray. Amen.
Amen. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first on the agenda tonight, we have National Agricultural Day, March 18th, proclamation recognizing agriculture's role in the American life. Accepting the proclamation is going to be Claudia Street. And if you could come up front, please. March 18th, 2015 is National Agricultural Day, and it is presented to the Yuba City Farm Bureau President and Executive Director. I guess John Munger is not here tonight, so you're on his behalf. Okay. It's a time to recognize and celebrate the abundance of agriculture provided by Americans. Sutter County is probably best known for its development of the world-famous Thompson seedless grapes. Yuba City is known as the peach capital, as well as Northern California's agricultural hub. According to the Sutter and Yuba County Agricultural Crops Report, the regional combined gross value is over 660, is that thousand? Million. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's
million.
And I believe that actually could be higher than that. So our products are marketed all over the world. Now, therefore, let it be resolved in recognition of the preeminent role the agriculture plays in the daily life of every American, in acknowledgement for the future progress and prosperity of the Yuba Sutter economy, the appreciation of the farmers and ranchers in the Yuba and Sutter area, across the nation. I, John Dukes, Mayor of Yuba City, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim March 18th, 2015 to be National Agricultural Day. Thank you. Would you like to give any comments?
So let me move around here a little bit. So I am Claudia Street. I started as Executive Director at Yuba City Farm Bureau in June. So on behalf of the directors that aren't here and the members that we represent, we really do appreciate not only national recognition but local. Farmers and ranchers, yeah, they produce food for the world, but it's the communities we live in that's important. So we appreciate this on all levels. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us tonight. Okay, I would like to move item number 8, the financial report for 6 months ending December 31st, up into the next position unless there's any objection from the council. All right, seeing none, I'll move this up to this point. Robin, you get to be first off the block here. This is actually a continuation from our last agenda, so.
And none of the masses came back.
Good evening. Tonight I will be providing you with a high-level overview, starting with the city's general fund for the first 6 months of the current fiscal year 14-15, followed up with the city's utility funds, and then that will be followed by an overview of what's coming next in anticipation of the city's budget for fiscal year 15-16 that staff is currently in process developing. This is a summary of the general fund budget versus actual at the highest level, including the beginning fund balance as of July 1st, 2014. Total revenues, total expenditures, and fund balance on a budget basis for the first 6 months of the fiscal year. The fund balance amount includes only the uncommitted amount. This does not include the city's Economic Stabilization Reserve Fund. It's the ESR that sustains us through our deficits. This fund balance here, the $4,325,000, is the city's uncommitted audited fund balance. And that's what helps us tide our general fund over until we start getting our revenues in. You'll see revenues in just a minute being very, very low at the beginning of the fiscal year. Our outflow is significantly higher the first 6 months of the year than our inflow from property taxes and sales tax, which is what drives that negative $4,087,000 fund balance as of December 31st. The year-to-date amounts are shown on a cash basis and represent the actual amounts that the city has received for revenues through December 31st. The original fiscal year 14-15 budgeted expenses were $36.3 million. To that, we added grant-funded appropriations of $893,000. If those aren't spent during the year, they're carried over to the following fiscal year unless the grant terms have expired and we're unable to carry them over. But grants carry over from year to year, along with purchase order commitments of $250,000. Negotiation contract cost increases totaling $518,000. That's all of the bargaining units that we had settled with as of December 31st. And then other items which totaled $34,000. The total currently budgeted expenditures are just over $38 million. Since revenues are on a cash basis and largest revenues aren't received until February and May of each year, you'll see that our fund balance is always deficit as of December. This year we were slightly better off than we were last year in December because I compared the two numbers. Not by much, but by a little bit. And these slides show your revenues, your major four revenues for the general fund. The blue bar represents the amount of budgeted amount, and the gold bar is the percentage of the budget received. So for sales tax, we've received over 25% of it, which seems a little low for December 31st financial report, but that's the typical cash flow pattern of sales tax. And we anticipate for that and plan for it. So that doesn't concern me. By the end of the year, finance projects that property tax revenues will be approximately $225,000 higher than the amount budgeted because our assessed values came in at 6.2% increase and we only budgeted for a 4% increase. I believe my financial report that was in the agenda packet said a 3%, which is what we include in our long-term fiscal model. We planned for a 3% increase, but we actually budgeted for a 4% increase in fiscal year 14-15 because we expected that it would do better. So I correct that, and it's actually a 4% that we budgeted, but we still beat that by 2.2%, and that's what I anticipate will generate the additional $225,000 in receipts to the city prior to the end of the fiscal year. This is 14 quarters of sales tax data on both a cash basis and an adjusted basis. The good news is that we've only had 2 negative quarters on a cash basis and only 1 on an adjusted basis, very small data. I just got in the Christmas quarter data late this afternoon, looked at it briefly before heading to the last meeting, and it's also positive data for us. So we don't know what it looks like on an adjusted basis till after we get our audit data, but good news for us. Things are lining up as we had hoped. You can see though from looking at it, it's very volatile and very difficult to predict over time. You look at the cash basis, which is what we have available to pay our employees and our vendors with. It's kind of been all over the place. Eventually the adjusted basis catches up with the cash basis and we get our money. If there's a misallocation or a mispayment, it just takes time. But it's definitely difficult to predict. We've budgeted for a 3.5% increase in sales tax, and we've achieved that thus far in the fiscal year.
Robin, could you explain for the public what the difference between cash basis and adjusted basis is?
The adjusted basis is what our auditors tell us that our total gross receipts were, and when they take out any double up payments if somebody paid late for last quarter, and the cash receipts are actually combined with this quarter, or if a payment was missed. There's always misallocations where we receive somebody else's allocation. It should have went to them and it came to us. So Board of Equalization will ultimately true that up and make it right. So we always look at the adjusted data as well as the cash data. On the expenditure side, we've spent 46.8% of our salaries and benefits. You would think that we would be at 50% as of December 31st. I went ahead and compared that to last year just out of curiosity because we had some pretty significant savings at the end of last fiscal year due to vacant positions throughout the city. Last year at the same time, we had only spent 44% of the amount budgeted. So what I'm seeing is we're spending more this year, which tells me that we're either filling vacancies faster through the recruitment process, or we're using overtime to fill vacant shifts. In the case of public safety, we have constant staffing models and we cover shifts with the appropriate number of personnel through overtime if somebody's off on sick leave or vacation. 42% of amounts budgeted for operating expenses have been expended halfway through the fiscal year. And the total general fund expenditures are 45% of the amount budgeted, which is fairly typical at this time of year. As far as how much we expect to see at the end of the fiscal year, it's difficult to say with the vacancies we have throughout the city at this point in time. Department heads will be turning in their budgets on April 6th, and with that, they provide to finance their estimated total expenditures for the fiscal year end. They project forward because they know what their vacancies are and how soon they plan to fill those vacancies more than what finance could ever know. We help them with those projections if they need them, but once those submissions are all made, finance will gather all the data and try to give a better projection as far as how much we anticipate being saved and not spent out of the current year budget. In previous years, it's averaged around $700,000. I know it'll be higher this year, I just don't know by how much. One of the things that came up recently was what the city's unfunded debt is with CalPERS. This is shown in millions of dollars. I've got safety in one column, miscellaneous, and then the total. The CalPERS plan currently has, as of June 30th, 2014, because it's always a little bit behind, assets of $148 million, liabilities of $198 million, an unfunded liability of just under $50 million, and a percentage funded status of about 74.8% when you combine both plans. To that, we also have pension obligation bonds outstanding of $3.1 million, so our total unfunded pension debt is about $53 million.
Robin, just a point before you get the next slide here, but on that 53 million, that's actually down. I believe we were up around 57 million. Is that?
It is down. It was a reduction of about 3.7 million. I didn't bring my data with me, but it is a reduction. That's correct. And I think the reduction is mostly due to the increase in assets due to market value from the stock market improving. The city's water fund operating revenues are at 54% of budget. The seasonal nature of water billings to our customers with consumption revenues being higher during the peak summer months accounts for the increase over 50%. The capital connection fee revenues are only at 8% of budget. That's partially due to the fact that we budgeted for $1.6 million in connection fees related to the Prop 84 water line project. Those haven't been received yet this fiscal year. We anticipate that they will prior to the end of the fiscal year, and that will help increase that percentage. Operating expenditures are at 53% of the amount budgeted and are right on track with expectations. Our wastewater utility fund operating revenues are right at 50%, right where we'd expect them to be. Capital connection fee revenues are at 40% of budget. Expenditures are at 39%. I took a look at those to see why they're less than what we would anticipate halfway through the year. We have some vacancies within the department. In addition, major maintenance, biosolids, and chemical expenditures which are encumbered but weren't spent as of December 31st. We anticipate that those will be spent prior to the end of the fiscal year. We have outstanding purchase orders, so I know that the funds are committed. Additionally, we have payment of solar expenses to PG&E that don't incur until May of each year. I like to show this calculation to council just so you're aware of how much we have cash available within our capital connection fee funds for both water and wastewater in relationship to the amount of debt requirement that we pay from those funds each year. We've been depleting our funds since development has slowed in the last 5 years or so. With our water fund, we have net resources of a bit available of just under $2.7 million. Annual debt service that we pay from those capital connection fees of about $1.5 million, which leaves us about $1.76. 1 year, 9 months worth of debt coverage available to pay our capital connection fee debt for water. Similar calculation for wastewater, and we have a little bit more, about 2.4 years worth of capital connection fee cash available, and that fluctuates regularly depending upon whether we've just paid debt service and how much we're taking in development connection fees. It's important to know, though, that as part of our bond covenants we have outstanding for making improvements to the city, both water and wastewater, our bond covenants indicate that City Council has agreed to raise rates if necessary in order to make debt service payments on the bonds if there's not sufficient capital connection fee monies to do so. So I would like to apprise council of where we're at fiscally with the cash available in connection fee accounts. Before I move on into what I'm anticipating and seeing for the beginning of fiscal year 15-16's budget preparation, does council have any questions on the 6 months that we've currently discussed for 14-15 fiscal year?
Any questions for Robin? Not yet. All right, go ahead and continue.
Well, like I said, we talked about fiscal year 14-15. I do want to let the public and the city's departments and employees know kind of where we're at. This is an update of the city's 5-year fiscal model on a go-forward basis. We shared this last year with everybody. I've gone through and updated it with our latest and greatest projections to try to manage expectations. We're still not in a position to add services or start adding things back to the city's budget. We're still in a very large deficit position, and until the pension obligation bonds are paid off, I anticipate that continuing. This is a historical slide that shows the city's revenues over time, going clear back to fiscal year 04 through fiscal year 14 on an actual basis, total revenues to the general fund, and then the fiscal year 15 amount is budgeted. Shows one-time sources such as sale of property and lease proceeds. It does not include the one-time cash reserves that we've pumped into the general fund to try to sustain our deficits during the recession and the downturn in the economy. Revenues peaked in fiscal year 08 at $37.2 million. Our budget amount is $34.9 million for fiscal year 15. I fully anticipate that we will come in higher than that because I know developer building permit fee revenues are coming in well, and as I indicated, property taxes are going to come in higher than we budgeted. But even with that said, we are still not back to our pre-recession levels. Expenses, on the other hand, we are back to our pre-recession levels. Expenses changed along with revenues, peaking in fiscal year 09. The amount budgeted for fiscal year 15 is increasing both due to contracted amendments to eliminate the furlough and increased healthcare and pension costs. Expenses peaked in fiscal year 08-09 and then were reduced during the recession, but now as we try to eliminate the furloughs and get back to more of a base level of services, our expenditures are going back up, so they're getting back to the pre-recession levels that we saw before. And these budget amendments include the contract amendments for mid-managers, first-level managers, confidential, POA, sergeants, and fire. The difference in the fiscal year 15 revenues of $34.9 million and expenses of $36.9 million is the $2 million deficit that we're looking at going into next fiscal year. I know we won't use all of our ESR, our Economic Stabilization Reserve, to the tune of $2 million because of vacant positions. We had savings last year. I anticipate we'll have savings again this year. I just don't know how much yet. This is a net of the operating revenues and operating expenditures, with the years in blue above the line being the years where we had surpluses. In fiscal year 05, the reason the surplus was so high is because we sold land. Fiscal year 09 forward, the red lines below the 0 point are the deficits that we've had. Fiscal year 14, we did have a surplus of about $600,000 due to the vacant positions. But I've shown fiscal year 15 budget as gray because we don't know what that's going to end up at by the time of the fiscal year ends. But right now it's at a $2 million deficit on a budget basis. And this is something I like to show people. One of our managers told me how useful and helpful he thought this slide was because it shows what the city would have expended had we not had the furloughs. The furloughs have saved us about $2.3 million at a 10% level. And it shows that we had, for fiscal year 10 and 11, we had a 5% furlough. And for fiscal year 12, 13, 14, and then I'm showing on into 15 at a 10% furlough, even though we've committed to reduce that furlough back to 5% as of March for some of the bargaining units. But it makes a significant difference, showing that for fiscal year 15, the deficit could be as high as $4.2 million. Last year, even with the surplus, it could have been as high as $1.6 million. So the furloughs have definitely saved the city a significant amount of money. This shows the 10-year changes in expense categories for the city, with PERS and overtime being the largest increases that we've incurred. They've grown most significantly. In recent years, overtime has been higher for police and fire, particularly last year because of vacant positions and the constant staffing model that we use for fire. In order to cover shifts, we pay overtime. So that has distorted to some degree the overtime percentage and increased it. The average increase in healthcare was only 5.1% over the 10-year period. You can see on the next slide, though, that the percentage was far less in the first half of the 10-year segment and significantly more in later years. The difference in the compounded growth rate of 2.6% for revenues compared to 3.8% for expenses may not seem like a lot, but over a 10-year period, it's significant. It represents a differential of 14.8% on a $35 million budget. That's just under $5.2 million. If our revenues had kept pace with our expenditures, we wouldn't talk about using our Economic Stabilization Reserve Fund to tide us over. We would be in a much better position than what we are right now fiscally. It's also noteworthy that material supplies and services have only gone up 0.3%, 1/3% over 10 years. We've really held the line on budgets where material supplies and services are concerned. Health expenditures, the red line represents the monthly cost for the city's share of healthcare, and then the blue lines are the percentage increases over time. And I wanted to show you this so you could see that in the early years, 3.4, 3.7, 6.5, not that large of increases. In more recent years, 11.6, 9.4, and 14%. Finance has historically used an 8% increase each year to project growth in healthcare. If this trend continues, 8% won't be enough. In the last 5 years, the average has been 9.5%. CalPERS' most recent actuarial reports show an increase over time in the projections that they expect the city to contribute. The blue line represents the safety rate as a percentage of payroll, and the green line is the miscellaneous as a percentage of payroll. The miscellaneous is provided to us exactly as a rate by CalPERS, and that's their projected rate. The safety, we've blended it with the variety of safety plans that the city has to come up with a composite rate. Projecting it to be 30.9% as of fiscal year 15, growing to 42.8%. This is only the employer portion. It doesn't include the portion that the city had been paying for employees. It also doesn't include 12.36% additional on top of that the city charges and collects through the payroll system to pay our pension obligation bonds. The city pays it, but we collect it through the payroll system, so we have it broke down by employee. So that's on top of this. So when you look at our costs going up, you can certainly see why, looking at all the graphs are on an upward trend where the expenditures are concerned. The good news is revenues are going up too. They're just not going up enough to generate new programs or add backs to the budget. So I wanted to make sure that everyone saw this with budget submissions coming soon. The total pension expenses that we're looking at are also on the rise at about $6.4 million anticipated in fiscal year 15, growing to $8.6 million in fiscal year 21. An increase of just under $2,175,000 or 33.6%. Pretty significant increases. And when everything's netted out between the growth in revenues that we expect, the budget balance is likely to remain in balance without, as an imbalance, I'm trying to say, not in balance with a deficit until the pension obligation bonds are paid off in fiscal year 16-17. And in 17-18, we start to climb out of the red and can look at the light at the end of the tunnel. Everything that finance puts together, we evaluate when we're preparing the budget. All of the negotiation scenarios that we've done with our employee bargaining units is all measured against, can our economic stabilization fund sustain us until fiscal year 17-18? Will our savings account get us by and cover our deficits? And I'm pleased to say that everything that we've done so far does. We set aside the ESR to tide us over during the downturn. And with the increases that we're seeing in employee benefit costs, our downturn has continued. The bottom line, employee benefit costs will continue to use up revenues. We have growth in revenues that they're being offset, though, by employee benefit costs, and that does not generate any new benefit to our employees in the form of take-home pay. It keeps the benefits sustainable. Our budget model continues to rely on the city's economic stabilization reserve over the next several years in order to sustain us during the downturn. With that, are there any questions?
Any questions of Robin? Robin, what is the current balance on the economic stabilization reserve, just roughly?
$4.3 million? 4.5 million? I'm going to say 4.5 million without looking.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. Mayor, just to thank you for your patience, and thank you to Robin for taking you through that. I do realize it's a similar presentation that you saw a week ago at your workshop. Staff felt it important that this also be captured for the public as part of a videoed presentation. So should anyone ask about it, any one of you as a council or staff can refer them over to Robin's nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm happy to, if anyone in the public or staff has any questions, happy to sit down and go through it with them and answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Robin.
You're
Great job.
welcome.
All right, moving on. Next is public communication. You're welcome and encouraged to participate in this meeting. Public comment is taken on items listed on the agenda when they are called. Public comment on items not listed on the agenda will be heard at this time. Comments on controversial items may be limited, and large groups are encouraged to select representatives to express their opinion of the groups. Written requests, public submitting written requests at least 24 hours prior to the meeting will be normally allotted 5 minutes to speak. Item 3, appearance of interested citizens. Members of the public may address the city council on items of interest that are within the city's jurisdiction. Individuals addressing general comments are encouraged to limit their statements to 3 minutes, and I believe we have someone from the public that wishes to comment. They were going to be here, I guess they didn't.
Laura?
Laurel? Yes, if you could step to the podium, please, and please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Laurel Winkmuller, and I live on 592 Leanne Avenue. And kind of what quickly came about is we had a mail theft issue happen the night of March 4th, and I came upon the incident coming home from work. Ended up following kind of hurriedly the woman in question back into town. I was able to get her license plate number. Caught her on our home video surveillance. I also have a dash cam and caught that also. Clearly shows her evading me. Police, Yuba City Police Department showed up about an hour later when I called dispatch back asking if somebody was coming out. My concern is my husband and I kind of felt like we were blown off by the officer that came and spoke to us. They in turn told me that there was nothing that they could do about the situation. I made a comment that this woman has my mail and probably someone else's on her neighborhood. My husband and I drove through the neighborhood waiting for the police to show up. There were 8 mailboxes affected. I caught her in the middle of taking one of our new neighbors' mail. They weren't able to get their mail out of the mailbox. It was still left in there. I verified with my mail lady 2 days later. She had delivered to our 4th section of mailboxes. We have individual mailboxes in our neighborhood. So I do know that this person does have my mail of some sort. The postal inspector now has this case. KCRA 3 did come out to our neighborhood. I did an interview with them. But my concern also is when the officer first showed up, he told me that I didn't call the right department. We've been annexed in within the last year because we had to go on city water. We were on a well that's out of compliance. So we went back and forth with this person about 3 times. Clearly didn't know that we were in Yuba City District to monitor. When another officer showed up about 15 minutes later, they seemed to know that they're to monitor our area, yet this first officer did not. The first officer also didn't get a very detailed report from me. When I called 5 days later to get a copy of that report was not complete. I asked if they'd notified the postal inspector. They hadn't. They said they wait till the report is done, so I called on my own. Now there's a detective on our case. I just called yesterday, was able to get a copy, or my husband picked up the police report. When I reviewed that last night, it is not a complete police report. It is missing a lot of information and is not correct. So there are a number of things that I'm very concerned about. I actually did get a voicemail on my way out of work. I noticed from the chief of police, I guess was notified because I was going to be here. So I will try to call him and see if I can set up a meeting and meet with him in person. But I did want to bring this up because it is a mail theft issue and we felt blown off, and also that Yuba City Police Department didn't seem to know that they were supposed to monitor our area. That's a huge cause for concern. We've had Sutter County Sheriff out there. They're, they're great to be out there. They're kind of surprised they don't monitor our area because I know that Yuba City has a big area to cover. So those are huge concerns for us. Everybody in the neighborhood is very concerned.
All right, thank you, Laurel, for your comments, and please do get in touch with Chief Rob Landon.
I will be.
And I'm sure he'll be happy to sit down and discuss these issues with you.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else from the public? All right. Seeing none, moving on to consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and may be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items prior to the time the council votes on the motion unless members of the city council, staff, or public request items be discussed or removed from the consent calendar. Is there anyone from staff wishing to remove anything? Council? Public? All right.
Move to approve.
All right, a motion. And a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries. Item number 7, professional services agreement for the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. Diane Langley.
Good evening. So at the goal setting workshop last week, I discussed the need for a pavement management system. And so the item before you tonight is award of a professional services agreement to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission of Oakland, California for the development and implementation of the city's pavement management system with the finding it's in the best interest of the city. The reason that we're going with the MTC is they developed a program called Street Saver that's widely used throughout California. For pavement management systems, we did research as to effective pavement management systems, and we're constantly redirected back to the Street Saver program. We also contacted SACOG to see if this was something that they were familiar with, and they were also very supportive of the Street Saver program. There's $100,000 available in the current capital improvement program budget for the preparation of a pavement management system. And we did send out a memo changing the fiscal impact associated with the project. We increased it to $80,000 with a request for an $8,000 contingency for a total of $88,000. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Diana. Any questions of staff? All right. All right. Then I would entertain a motion on this item.
Move to approve.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously. All right, business of the city council. Item number 9, cancel April 21st council meeting and schedule a special joint study session presented by Terrell.
So moved.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So the request tonight is to reschedule or to cancel the regular council meeting on Tuesday, April 21st, as there will not be a quorum available, as several members will be at the Cap to Cap trip, and to schedule a special joint workshop on Tuesday, April 14th with the Planning Commission to discuss the harder specific plan. They have several amendments to their agreement that they'd like to propose, and also discuss their financing plan and credits and reimbursement schedule.
All right. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
All right. Motion. Second.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Motion carries. City council reports. Councilmember Cleveland.
Not much happened this week on my committees, but tomorrow we'll be having Housing Authority and discussing many items regarding affordable housing, of course, with the progress that we've been having. Really that's all I would have. By the way, it's something to do with the Irish or something today. St. Patrick's Day.
All right.
Of course, the wife always makes me wear green, being she's about half Irish, so I better do that.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I guess we can go have green beer.
Go.
Yeah, but that doesn't go over well. Again, it's just
All
doesn't
right.
qualify.
Councilmember Didball.
Had a couple of things. Just wanted to say it was a great priorities and goal setting workshop that we had last week. It was very, very beneficial for me to go through the details, being the first there. So thank you very much for putting all that together. That was great, Steve. Thanks. Also attended the grant workshop that was thrown by Congressman Garamendi's office. That was very, very helpful as well. I think we actually have one of the members here. So thank you very much for putting all that together as well. And then lastly, just wanted to say that I was honored with the appointment to the Children and Families Commission through the Board of Supervisors this last week. So I'm very excited to do some work with that group. So.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Gill.
Just a lot of action with the Sutter Buttes Flood Agency, and I think our Appeal Democrat did a great job of highlighting some of the issues that's coming to forefront. In fact, tomorrow
I know we've got some issues with United Auburn, as well as the Army Corps of Engineers are trying to see who's the rightful owner of some of the belongings that were found. And so we continue to work on that on an hourly basis, hopefully find some resolution tomorrow, if not even tonight, with the high powerful meetings that continue to progress. So we're hopeful that we can continue to work forward and not get our permit pulled by the Army Corps or get hit with some kind of a lawsuit from the United Auburn. So it's just one of those sad things that as we continue to move forward, we're being held hostage and we're between a rock and a hard pan, like I think Mike said. So, but we're going to continue to progress along. So hopefully by tomorrow evening, we'll have an answer one way or the other.
Right. Thank you, Vice Mayor Buckland.
Attended the SACOG meeting. It was just a committee meeting for the Government Relations and Public Affairs. Specifically, we were addressed on many of the as we move forward with the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and Sustainable Community Strategy update. It's a 4-year update. All of the plans are moving forward to be able to implement that and get approval in April. So anyone that may want to know more about that can certainly go to the SACOG website for an update. Also the workshop that we all attended last week. Once again, when we invite the public, we don't do it casually. We'd like to have the public attend those priority and goal setting workshops. So please, think about it in the future that you may want to attend and have some input to your city. That's all I have.
All right. Attended the mosquito vector district meeting last Thursday. They're busy preparing for the upcoming mosquito season. It's interesting because a lot of people think because of the drought we're in that we don't have as big an issue with mosquitoes, but conversely they're finding that it is even higher rates of West Nile virus during drought years because there's less water, and so the mosquitoes are breeding in the smaller sources of water, and the birds are there trying to get their share of the water also, and so it transfers more readily. And so they're preparing for a year. Last year was a very high year for our area, and looking at another year that could potentially be very high for West Nile virus in our region. Coming up this weekend, we have the Buckeye celebration on Saturday. There's, I believe, on Friday evening there is the reception for the hostess, and then Saturday the parade, and then on Sunday the bomb festival, I guess is what they call it, blow things up, right? Right down your alley. But anyhow, so we have that coming up this weekend. Encourage our citizens to participate in that. And that's all I have for now. So, meeting adjourned.